final time was in 2009, late 2009. They tried to indict us on a conspiracy charge. They said we met at the Turk Valley Club. Now, what we were doing there was trying to formulate or put together a group, a corporation to attack Medicare, Medicaid fraud. You know, they actually give 30% finder's fee on anything you save the government. And since they have a 60 billion loss every year, we thought we could make up to 20 billion a year. Save the government money and save us money, right? So, you know, the potential was there. Anyway, and we had good ideas on how to do that. Not the stuff that they were doing, duplicate billing. Now, we were actually going to pick out fraud. So, when they said that, they were going to charge, our lawyer told us they were going to charge us on that and indict us and get the conspiracy charge on us, why we started wondering, how can they do that? When they got all this data about us, they knew what we were doing there. This is a false charge, of course. They were trumping up and fabricating evidence to put us in jail. That's what they did to Tom Drake. That's what they did to us. So, but I had the data because I got it back from the friends. We had other people there who weren't involved in NSA at all. We were going to draw them into this program too, and of course we shared everything with them. So that when the NSA or what the FBI took all the data away from us, thinking we didn't have any exculpatory data, we called them up, saying, "Give us back the data, will you?" And then we got it back. So then that was all the evidence of malicious prosecution. Okay, so I said, how can I get this information across to the DOJ lawyers that I'm going to charge them with this when we go to court under their indictment? Well, I thought for a minute. I said, okay, Tom Drake's phone is tapped. I know by the FBI. So I'm going to call Tom. I'm going to read across to him all the evidence I've accumulated on malicious prosecution of the DOJ lawyers. And so I did that. And I said, Tom, at the end of it, I said, Tom, tell your lawyer that we intend to indict them for malicious prosecution when they take us to court with this charge of conspiracy. And I said, and then I just hung up. Well, then a month later, January, I think the 12th it was of 2010, we got letters of immunity from the DOJ. So that went away rather quickly, and our lawyer never knew what happened because I never told him what I did. Because I said, why should I tell my lawyer? He doesn't know anything anyway. So anyhow, that was how he got rid of it. And from then on, in 2011, I just thought, well, gee, with all this, that was really the final thing for me. I mean, here's my own government, Department of Justice, trying to fabricate and frame us as a group. I also tried to frame Tom Drake. I mean, they took papers from his home that were marked clearly unclassified, drew a line through it. It was obvious they did it. I mean, it was on the court record. And they stamped it secret or top secret, and then charged him with having classified data. Well, that's a felony. That's fabricating evidence to convict people. That's a felony. Why aren't these people in jail? When Dick Cheney said we're going to go to the dark side, he really meant it, and we really did. Okay, so that's my story. Now I just can't stop and let this continue without saying what I had to say about it. I mean, this is just terrible. I mean, we're losing our government here.
All right, to keep this nice and brief, I'm going to quote Kim Kardashian at her wedding vows and saying, let's make this short and sweet. We're going to move on to the next question. I'm going to ask from right to left in 2 sentences. 2. How can we push for corporations to not be considered to be people?
Well, I can't really answer that in 2 sentences, and I haven't given much thought. So, I mean, it always comes from the bottom up. They're not going to, it serves too many corporations' interests the way it is now. It's determined by the Supreme Court. It's only going to change when people really get genuinely involved and not just think that these problems are coming from President Obama because he's a Democrat or President Bush because he's a Republican, but begin realizing that the system of government, not the system of government, but the way it's being enacted these days is the problem. And we need to correct it, and it's only going to be done with the exercise of democracy to the utmost, and get serious about it, and gather information, and realize that how many people benefit off this. I'm gone beyond my 2 cents. But one final thing, and nobody's mentioned the military-industrial complex. The Washington Post, once in a while, does a informative article. Most of the time, it just covers up this stuff. But they had an article a couple of years ago about the immense amount of resources in the DC area, dedicated contractors to intelligence, analyzing whatever. And it's an incredible amount. In 2008, when I was out in DC and everything was going, falling apart here in Minnesota, the economy, the one island of prosperity in the entire country was Arlington, Virginia, and pretty much Arlington is the center of everything. It's the center of all these contractors, and nobody there was suffering whatsoever. It's prosperous, and it's good times, and that's what people need to realize is they're sucking the money out of our pockets and out of Middle America, and Middle America, including Virginia, and every place but Arlington, Virginia, and a couple of other places right around the DC area. And it's not because of the Health and Human Services Department, but it's because of the military, the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, and they're the ones who are taking the money and our prosperity away from us and the prosperity of our children to fund their own lavish lifestyle.
I'll try to keep this in 2 sentences. So, do the corporations control the government, or does the government control the corporations?
Yes.
They feed off of one another. Their power base is based off of one another, and the only way I foresee getting rid of treating corporations as a people is you have to get rid of both.
Okay, 2 sentences. Todd is right. I agree with it.
I'm going to turn this over to Heather, who I know very little about except that she ran for office, it has brown hair and it long legs. So let's go to her, bring her up here, and we're going to go to the next portion of this. Yeah, go ahead and give her a round of applause. She ran for U.S. Senate, if I remember right. Bang up job, too.
As he said, I'm Heather, and I have the audience questions, and I was trying to organize them in order because I think a lot of them are actually related. I think people wanted some clarification on a number of programs, considering PRISM, Stellar Wind, Trailblazer, Thin Thread, the FISA Amendments Act of 2008, CGAD, DARPA, the Talentech Holdings, Executive Order 12333. I really feel that these are related. Can you elaborate on that? And
DARPA is the defense department that deals with advanced research, and they hand out contracts to contractors and the universities and so on to try to do technology developments. Usually it's over the horizon and you never see it, which means it's money that's spent on advanced research that never produces anything. That was my view of them when I was there, and I wanted to do something that I can see, bring something over the horizon back into view. Well, yeah, so they kept working over the horizon. It was something like you could do, indefinitely and say, well, I'm thinking ahead. You're always thinking ahead and you never really produce anything. So that was the way I viewed them anyway. Sure. Well, they spend a lot of money, $3 billion a year back in the 90s. So, but the other programs, PRISM, that's all these. A lot of these programs are data acquisition programs. That is, just functionally, it's data acquisition. They give different names to different companies or to different operations. Like, if we're going to query the companies, it's PRISM. Okay, if we're going to tap directly off the fiber lines for data, taking it in real time as opposed to after the fact asking for it, then it's multiple programs. We'll call the overall group of them upstream, and each one will be, each company will have a different name. Like there are exceptions there, like Fairview is AT&T, Stormbrew is Verizon. Oakstar is actually foreign companies, okay, that deal directly with NSA. Okay, and some of them, the only one I knew was the Polish one, and then they sub-named that one. It's called Orange Crush. So there's all these names, but it's really data acquisition. They're doing this to confuse them, everybody in Congress that wants to look into the programs. Because the more names you have, the harder it is to understand what they're doing. That's exactly why they do that. Okay? So what are some of the other ones there?
In conjunction with that, when did some of these programs start? Because my understanding is some of this started before 2001 and before the Patriot Act.
There's some implication that get out here. Joe Nacio is a guy who used to be the CEO of Quest. I met with him and talked to him a bit because I knew he was probably framed like they tried to do to us, and he didn't catch him, so he went to jail for about 5 years. Okay, so but that got rid of him. But they approached him in 27th of February. It's in court records. 27th of February of 2001, about 7 months before 9/11. And it was somebody from NSA, and they asked him to produce all the records of his customers, every U.S. customer as well that he had, and give all the data to NSA. So that was the plan even before 9/11, okay, was to take in data. He refused, okay, he said, produce a warrant signed by a judge and I'll give it to you. And they never did, but what they did was they went after him criminally, got him convicted, and that was the example they used every other CEO. Okay. That's how you threaten all of them. You put one of them in jail. Well, that's how we should handle our elected officials. They've obviously been committing these crimes. We need to put them in jail. I blame what's happening now on Jerry Ford. Why? He pardoned Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was indicted and he was going to go to court for the crimes that Minaret, COINTEL, all those programs, the programs that are exactly similar today, except they're on a much larger scale. If you read the indictments against Richard Nixon, they're the same things that are happening today. But we haven't indicted anybody. We haven't impeached anybody. We should have impeached them all and indicted them. So, this is how the government dealing with people. This is a totalitarian state you're talking about here. This is like the Gestapo or the SS. This is not democracy. Some of the other ones?
Somebody wanted to elaborate on the privacy compacts of the TPP, TTLP, and the TLSA, so-called trade agreements.
I really don't think I'm competent to answer that one. I can't really, maybe somebody else can?
Briefly on some, but not much. So the main thing a lot of these trade agreements are covering that I've seen has been intellectual property law, namely trying to get copyrights, held in this country to be enforced in foreign countries. And honestly, if you look at the entire, how they're being negotiated, they're keeping the entire agreements in secret. They won't actually release what the agreements say for public scrutiny. And that right there should be a big red flag to everybody.
The main program I didn't address was Stellar Wind. Now, Stellar Wind is not an acquisition. If you take all these different named acquisition systems and for different companies and different, whether you have wiretaps or you're looking at satellite access, something like that, it's different names. And if you take that as acquisition of data, then when you pull it into your database, you partition the domestic to one side. Now, all that domestic data, then an analysis of it and the collection of it and storage of it is called Stellar Wind. It's dealing with the domestic side of collection. And domestic, anything that pertains to domestic analysis of domestic data or collection or acquisition or any use of that, okay? So, and the others are named in different programs. Like when they talk about, we don't want to, when they were talking about the 215 program, it was the secret interpretation of 215 program. That when they say that, they talk about it as one program. Well, it's not. It's like 14 different programs, okay? The one program, the Stellar Wind part of it that contributed to Stellar Wind, was the one that was domestic. And that's easy to tell. If you're looking at phone numbers, anything started with a one was generally either the United States or Canada. That's pretty simple, okay? And I should tell you another story. When Senator Wyden asked the director of NSA, how many U.S. citizens do you have in your databases? It was kind of hard to avoid that, okay? So they went away and said, I can't answer today. Okay, so they went away and then they sent him in writing. And in writing, they told him, we can't tell you that because it would be a violation of the privacy rights of U.S. citizens. This is in writing, okay? I call this the arrogance of power, and the intelligence agencies think they own the government, okay? That's saying you go away. Well, what they should have done is cut their budget by 30% right there.
How about with James Clapper?
I know him personally, by the way. Not wittingly.
Just going to the point that you made about secrecy, here we have an international trade agreement and it's secret. You know, here we're supposed to be in a democracy and we have just a couple people making the decision whether or not they're going to do it. People's livelihoods are at stake. So, same problem as everywhere else we're seeing in national security. It's all secret. We don't know what's going on. Here's somebody who used to work for the CIA sent an email around to 2 people the other day asking, has anybody ever heard of the NSAC? And everybody said no. And there's just a couple things out online. Did a quick search, and it's something that's really within the Department of Justice and the FBI, but it's totally secret. Really, nobody knows what it is, including some journalists who are really on top of these things. And but they've got a huge budget, and they've got the authority to track, U.S. citizens, not just foreign citizens. So it's really our own internal Stasi now. We have, let's stop kidding ourselves, we have the infrastructure of a totalitarian state. Whether or not they set up concentration camps yet, that's beside the point. The infrastructure has been created. And one final point, a recent law review article coming from George Mason University, where old NSA directors go to teach and live off of retirement and carry other influence, came up with the proposal the other day that it's time to stop, or it's time to start putting into military detention fifth columnists, like law professors who have disagreed with the government. We're at that point. We're at that point right now. It's just who's going to be president here in the next term and how far they're willing to go. Dick Cheney, if he was there, we know how far he would have gone. He would have set up concentration camps way back in 2002 for U.S. citizens, not foreign terrorists.
I had something to add to what Todd was saying, and I guess it was in Chicago when I was on the radio. I can't remember which radio it was. I've been on so many since I came up this way. And I was asked about this plane flying around, and what was my best guess of that? I said, well, to me, it looked like it was part of this operation, and what they're doing is having a sensor up there that's sensing all the cell phones that are in any location where they aren't getting geopositioning on them, so that now they have this massive amount of data on all the cell phones active in the city and where they were at the time. And then that's going to feed into things like treasure map. Okay, and it's done by the FBI. I mean, we've only talked about NSA programs. The FBI and CIA have similar kinds of programs, and they do this kind of data acquisition too. And none of that's been talked about because they do it without oversight.
You spoke about oversight and elaborated on some of these programs. What I want to know, and I'm sure a lot of people here would like to know, can you elaborate more on how some of these committees, the FISA court was actually established without actually any type of election? I think a lot of laws are passed, but then the implementation and policies and procedures surrounding them are left up in the air. So can you elaborate on that and how the people can actually counter that? Anybody else there?
Take that one on. Actually, the Intelligence Committees, House and Senate, and the FISA Court were a result of the Church Committee investigation in the mid-'70s, and also the FISA law in 1978. And those were created because of what they found out about what NSA was doing with the Minaret program, spying on U.S. citizens without a warrant, and what the FBI was doing in COINTEL, profiling people and doing the similar things against people, actually trying to get people like Martin Luther King to commit suicide, things like that. And the CIA had their similar program called Chaos, doing the same thing against the same set of people, enemies of the White House, basically. People opposing the war, Vietnam War. And I'm sure they were all included, anybody in any way connected with opposing that war and trying to expose some of the lies and parts that got us into it, got all our people killed. And
all the Sheila Wells stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we lost so many people who got named and killed over there, and we killed so many people in names. I mean, it's all based on a lie, just like Iraq, based on a lie. So, I mean, we were talking about earlier, even CIA people knew that when when they said that Cheney was saying there was a meeting between Atta and some other people in Iraq. That was a lie. People knew that that was a lie. And they didn't tell anybody, so they let the lies continue and they let them build up the lies to justify the war. And that's the same thing happened in Vietnam. So, I mean, we haven't had, and by the way, the same thing's happening here with the war on terror, supposed war on terror. There's no war. Congress never declared war. I mean, Congress is the only body that can declare war. The president can't. And so when they're calling it a war, and they always try to justify it as war, that's how you justified his statements in secret writing, right? In secret, saying that this, under Article 2 powers of war, you know, the president could do all this stuff. Well, there's no war. Where's the war? There's no declaration of war. So he has no power under that. That's why later on he tried to get Congress to agree, give retroactive immunity to all the telecoms and things like that for all the crimes they were committing. Right? And also they should have tried, they didn't give retroactive immunity to all the government employees that were committing these crimes too. They didn't do that. But I wanted to add one thing about Edward Snowden. None of the whistleblower laws apply to him because he's a contractor. Whistleblower laws only apply to government employees. So I just wanted to.
Sure. Did anyone else have comments on committees or how this works?
So, for quite some time now, our government has been working under the premise of the phrase, it's better to ask forgiveness than for permission. And it's taken it to an absolutely absurd level. Every time the government gets caught doing something nasty, the reaction is a new committee, an oversight committee is created. And then that oversight committee either doesn't do any oversight or it itself gets caught doing something nasty leading to another oversight committee. The only solution I see to this problem is through term limits. Now, I'm not thinking limiting the number of terms somebody has, but mandating 2 terms. And with apologies to anybody who's in office in here, you have to understand these are drastic times. But I believe that all elected officials in the federal level should have a mandatory 2 terms. 1 in office, 1 in prison.
Chris made an excellent point. I wanted to say, and we learned this with the torture report. We saw how the CIA was actually infiltrated into the committees. And this is not a secret from what I understand. A number of people have told me this, that they are infiltrated into various government agencies in D.C. that might have any effect, possibility of touching the CIA, so they want to know what's going on. And so we have a broken down oversight system to begin with. What's the solution? What they always sell this on, and is the fact that we're at war. And going to Bill Binney's point that we're not legally at war, but yet they can sell that to people so easily, and people that supposedly are just skeptical of government, yet they'll just fall in line, click their heels together as soon as you say, we're at war. There's some Arabs over there that are threatening to kill us, and we got to do this or that. And here's another country we need to go in and depose and have regime change. And probably almost 50% of the people are ready to immediately, again, click their heels and fall in line. And that's one of the things we've got to break down. This is what American citizens can do. These war claims are bogus. Al-Qaeda never consists of more than a couple of hundred people who were involved in Afghanistan, fighting amongst each other, and any talk of a caliphate only meant that, back in 1920, the caliphate was taken apart, which only meant that it was the Turkish caliphate that had existed for hundreds of years and never threatened the West. It was something that we easily lived along with, and no different than the Vatican, but it's been exaggerated into by Islamophobes into this threatened, second coming of the Nazis. So you got to begin looking and listening with skepticism to these fanatics, because that's what way you can describe them, who are trying to tell us that, yeah, the Muslims are coming and we got to all get to the shore and with our guns because, they're going to invade England. It's a bunch of BS. And we need to, until we get away from this permanent, here's a term they're using now, persistent war. The state of persistent war, meaning, yeah, this one might end, but there's going to be another one right around the corner, so let's just get used to it. I mean, I've actually seen articles saying that. We got to break that system down, because that's what allows the military-industrial complex all this immense profits. They pay for think tanks in D.C. to keep promoting wars. And that's the first place to start. Until we get out of this war paradigm, we're not going to break the stranglehold that the military-industrial complex has on us. So that's the place to begin.